Hi, welcome back to Throwback Thursdays. My first and only guest tonight. I really like it when I just have one guest, so we can focus exactly on what that person brings to the world of entertainment and to the world in general. So my first and only guest is really an incredible person. Whatever classic TV show that you can think of, she has somehow been a part of it, whether on camera or behind the scenes. I remember seeing her on the Carol Burnett show, which I think was one of her first appearances in the first season, I believe, of the Carol Burnett show. And she is just a lovely human being, so talented in so many different ways. She's been a singer, a songwriter, an actress, best known on television during the daytime for Days of Our Lives. And she's written a book. And that's going to be the focus of today. So without further ado, the one and only Gloria Loring.
Yay! I love it. This is fun. I like it. I'm very casual. Can you tell that? I've got my phone there, but I turned off the ringers so it won't bother us.
Well, you know, right away, what I love about you...
And I've not written one book. This is my 7th book, actually.
Oh, for the love of
No,
heaven.
I know, but you know what?
I think
The other ones were all, some of them were fundraisers for the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation.
Mhm.
2 of them raised $1 million for diabetes research. And then, I know, wasn't that amazing? It wasn't just me, it was a lot of us, but it was kind of, it came to me as an idea. Because somebody asked me for, we're in the cookbook section, somebody asked me for recipe for a celebrity cookbook. And then when I was on Days of Our Lives, when I first joined, and in the makeup room, I noticed that people were trading recipes. The actors were trading recipes. Oh, I've got this great, and you just put everything in the pan, and you 350, and you put it in the oven. And I thought, well, I bet the fans would love this. And my son had been diagnosed with diabetes a year before. And actually, this story is the first story and chapter of my book, which is about putting together this Days of Our Lives celebrity cookbook and getting everything ready. And 10 months later, I had everything ready to go, except I had no money to print the copies that I needed to print. And I needed $40,000 to print 50,000 copies. And I had asked, I'd done presentations, I talked to all kinds of people, and I was just out of ideas. But I kept thinking, you know, I can't have done all this work and come all this way for it something not to happen. And what happened was, it was a Friday, I went in Days of Our Lives. I'd finished my day and I was first up, which meant I finished early. And I drove to the airport and I caught a plane to Houston to play in the Jack Benny Memorial Tennis Classic because Jack Benny had diabetes, so it was for juvenile diabetes. So the next night, after playing tennis all day with the paying clients, patrons, I sang a couple songs. I came down off the stage and there was a man sitting right there at the bottom of the stage waiting for me. And I said, hi. And he said, hi, do you remember me? And I thought, well, I said, you do look familiar. And he said, I'm Ben Rogers from Beaumont, Texas. And I went, I remember you. I flew on your plane with Bob Hope. We went for a big golf thing in Cleveland. And I hear a little voice in my head say, tell him about the cookbook. And I'm thinking, who was that? But I kept talking, and then I hear again, I kind of hear, tell him about the cookbook. I get this prompting, this inner prompting. And finally, he said, your son has diabetes. I said, yes. And actually, I've created this cookbook, this Days of Our Lives celebrity cookbook. And, you know, I think we've got 10 million daily viewers, and I really think it could be a success. I think people would want it, and we're going to give it away in exchange for a minimum $10 donation. And he said, that sounds like a great idea. And I said, yeah, the only thing is we don't have any money to print the books. And he said, well, how much do you need? And I said, well, I need $40,000. And he said, well, hell, girl, he said, I'll give you 10. Come on, let's go out in the lobby. I got some friends here tonight. This is Texas.
Nice.
By the end of the night, I had $17,500 committed. After trying for almost a year, within 4 weeks, I had $42,500. We printed 50,000 copies. We sold out. We printed another 50,000, and we raised $1 million for diabetes research. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? Just when you thought nothing could change, and that story stayed with me all those years, because when I was talking with someone like yourself, an interviewer, And he said, well, that's an amazing story. I said, I know. Can you believe that? Coincidence? Isn't that crazy? And he said, well, yeah, but you know, coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. And I said, whoa, wait a minute, say that again? Coincidence is what? God's way of what? Wait, I gotta write that down. Coincidence is God's way of what? Remaining anonymous. What does that mean? Wow. It's so cool. It sounds smart, doesn't it? Well, it's from Albert Einstein. Come on. If you're gonna borrow a title, borrow from somebody smart, okay? So this stayed with me all those years. And I was on Days of Our Lives, and then other thing that I went through a divorce. I was married to Alan Thicke, Robin Thicke. Yes, I am hashtag Robin Thicke's mom. Yes, I am. And I used to be Gloria Loring. Now I'm hashtag Robin Thicke's mom. Anyway, but I was with Alan. We got divorced. All these things were happening. And now I started to notice, because I had this idea, coincidence is God's way. What does that mean? How does that work? And I started to see that very often, just when I needed it, something, someone, some inspiration would show up and help me to the next stage. Chapter 3 is about the letters that came to me from a woman in Lincoln, Nebraska, who I had not met until I was there doing an autograph session with the Days of Our Lives Celebrity Cookbook for a juvenile diabetes event, and that afternoon we did something like this. And she came up in the line and she said, I have a daughter who has epilepsy, so I really understand what you're going through with a child with chronic illness, and I just want you to know you're not alone. I understand. And she gave me a letter. And ever since my son had been diagnosed, there were people who commiserated, but the letter that she wrote me, I still have. I have all her letters, was so enormously compassionate and inspiring that I just wound up sobbing. I didn't know that there could be somebody that kind. I mean, I've met kind people, but this was and I didn't even know her, you know? And so I put the letter aside. I thought, isn't she wonderful? And about 6 weeks later, I got another letter from her, and she said, I don't know if I told you, but I pray a lot every morning, and I'm getting messages for you. And she said, I hope this isn't, invasive in any way, but here's the letter that I got. And this letter was, Dear daughter, I'm putting you on a new road. No one in the world knew that I was separating from my husband. And this letter arrived saying, you are not alone. I am putting you on a new road. This is chapter 3. That's just like one chapter. These letters arrived for 2.5 years, about every 6, 8, 10 weeks, something like that. They started when I decided to separate. They ended when my divorce became final. And I asked her years later, when I started writing this book, I said, I realize I'm so remiss in this. I never asked you, how did you start to write these letters to me, and why? How did that all come about? And she told me this extraordinary story about she was driving to her Bible study class on a Wednesday night, and she said all of a sudden it was as if I stepped out of time and space, and I pulled the car over, and I heard a voice say, you must tell Gloria that she is not alone and that she is loved. And I started to argue with the voice and said, I don't know anybody named Gloria, except that actress on Days of Our Lives. And I don't know, I'm in Lincoln, Nebraska. How in the world will I ever see her or get to talk to her? If I write her a letter, she'll think I'm a Looney Tune. She really said Looney Tune. And the voice said, wait and see. And that night, she went to her Bible study, and they always had a little quiet kind of Quaker time at the end when they'd have a silence, and then if anybody felt prompted, and they were in their silent time after their discussion, and suddenly one of the women said, I don't know why, but I'm being prompted to share that I saw in the newspaper today that Gloria Loring is going to be here on Saturday signing her cookbook. And she heard a voice in her say, there it is. And that's how she wound up in front of me. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? Just when I most needed. And I don't think I'm special. I think these things happen to us. But if we don't have a context,
or a level of awareness,
a context, a level of awareness, we have to have a big, I think it expanded my vision, that there is goodness in the universe, and whatever you want to call it, you can call it Yahweh, you can call it God, you can call it Buddha, whatever you want to call it, or call it nothing at all. It still exists. There is a connectedness between us and goodness and difficulty, by the way, which I also deal with in the book. But there is a connectedness, and we play our role in bringing that into our lives by what we think and feel and focus on, and sometimes we attract people who are the best bad guy. You know, like when you see like Humphrey Bogart or somebody and or Jack Nicholson, oh my God, he was the best bad guy in that movie. And haven't we all had somebody in our lives who's like the best bad guy, was so miserable, kicked my butt all over town, and I finally said, I am not having this anymore. I am going to grow up or step out or change my ways. I will never have a relationship like this again. You know, I mean, those are the people that we attract because they see our vulnerability. But my sister actually, as this book was being prepared for printing, my sister was in her last months and she was dying. And she never got to read the book, but we were talking about, I was telling her I was rewriting and she just didn't have the energy. And, but she said, but, you know, when the good things come, I understand that, but, you know, she had cancer. And she said, but what about when the bad things, when the hard things come? Are we attracting that? And I said, don't go there. It's not that. Things happen. We don't know why. We don't even know why the good comes into our lives sometimes. But what we can ask, and I think this is really key, is what is this asking of me? What is this asking of me? What is this person who's such a jerk? Patience? Empowerment on my own part? Excuse me, no, I am not going to be treated like that. Right. Compassion? You look like you're having a really hard day. I've done that with people who are real cranky, like a checkout lady or something, and you see them, and sometimes you'll hear people like, you're such a bitch. I mean, I hate that word. But anyway, you know what I mean. I just judge. And I will look at that person, this is an unhappy person. Right. And so I will, as I go up to them and they're checking things, I say, look like you're having a tough day. And invariably, they will turn and say, yeah.
Well, it's not a good day. It's not a good day.
It's my sister's sick. My child went to the, something happened. My mother, whatever, something happened. And so what this idea, this coincidence being the goodness with a capital G that connects us, is that everywhere we go, we can use anything that is good or that doesn't seem good for the good by looking at what is this asking me? And it's asking us to become more than we have been. It's asking more patience, it's asking more goodness, more compassion, more kindness, something like that. And that's what the book is about. And I've had people say to me that they've read it 6 and 7 times and they keep it because there's so much in it. Even though it's just my stories and a lot of wisdom that I gleaned, because it took me 10 years to write. I kept saying, who's going to want to get a book by Gloria Loring that talks about coincidence and God, for heaven's sakes? But
well, it sounds like a TV movie for sure. I mean,
well, it's pretty. I think every one of us has a life that could, with the right writer and crew, could make a TV movie. But there is so much, and I find even now, everything that comes into my life that challenges me in any way is asking me to become more, asking me to step up, to change my ways, to find a new way of thinking, a new way of being, whatever.
So do you think that happens to all of us, wherever we go, each of us?
Yeah. Yeah. You get somebody who just, here's the thing that I see. The minute somebody really pisses me off, I mean really like, I realize that they are exhibiting some quality that I don't like about myself.
It's the truth. That's absolutely the truth.
That wonderful thing somebody told me once, where when you point a finger at somebody else, you have 3 fingers pointing back at you.
Wow.
Oh, look at him. Oh, yeah. And I I find it to be true. Every time I want to just somebody, I go, oh, I've done that. I have done that, and I probably still do. Oh, and I don't
but see,
like
now
that.
you're evolved in that way, though. I mean, most people in general are not that mindful. So how do you get to be mindful? If you don't think there's any issue, if you think it's the other person.
I think you have to be suffering so much that you'll do whatever it takes to not suffer anymore. I grew up in a family with alcoholism. I talk about that. I also talk in chapter 8 and 9 about an event that happened that we would call inappropriate sexualized contact with my father when he was very drunk that profoundly affected me. And I think that I had so much deep trauma stuff sitting in there. My niece, who's many years younger than me, but had 2 alcoholic parents, and her mother used to beat the crap out of her and punch her in the face and stuff like, I mean, just, and we've been in a relationship for 10 years now. She has a wonderful 8-year-old boy. And she said, how do you stay so stable? How do you stay? Nothing hardly ever. I said, honey, it's taken 25 years of meditation and practice and spiritual work and reading and, contemplation. I mean, every time anything happens that disturbs me, that rocks me, I go to my meditation place and I sit and figure it out. What is this about? What is this about, Gloria?
What about as an artist? Do you believe that the challenges that you've had have contributed to your art as an actress, as a performer, as a songwriter? Certainly directly, obviously, you wrote a book because of it, but
yeah.
I mean, on some, earthy level, do you feel that had these things not happened in your life that you would be a lesser artist or a lesser person?
I don't know. I mean, there are people with really great childhoods who are fabulous artists. I mean, there is that myth that, we have to be Picasso and destroy lives everywhere in order to be a great artist, and I don't think that's true. I think each of us has had hurts that I don't think there's hardly anyone who's escaped. I have a person, of my darling friend, Miss Debra from Bristol, Tennessee. We call her the Bristol Pistol. She's had diabetes for 50 years. She's in fabulous health. She had the most wonderful mother and father. Lived with her mother and father until they both passed. I mean, she just always lived in Bristol, and there was never a reason to move out. But Miss Debra, when she came home from the hospital when she was 9, and she was like, okay, I'm back, I have diabetes, but I'm taking shots, and, I'm going to be great, and Mom and Dad are helping me, and none of the people on the block would let their children play with her anymore. And she internalized this as, I'm not healthy, I'm not good enough anymore. And it took many years before she could finally realize what that had done to her. And she's now finally letting go of that. Because she used to get, smoke would come out of her ears practically. It's just somebody, teased her about her diabetes. Because that was her vulnerable spot. But we've been really good friends now for 17 years, and we've talked about all these practices, and she's a meditator now. And, the thing about meditation is, first of all, it actually changes your brain. And if you've had abuse as a child, they have shown that when you've been abused as a child, there are changes that go on in the brain. The amygdala gets bigger, you become more sensitized. PTSD, when people have had this enormous trauma, stuff gets triggered really quickly. So what you can do, there's actually a book called Train Your Mind, Change Your Brain. It's about some people working with the Dalai Lama. And they're actually able to, now that they have the brain scans, show that people who meditate regularly actually change the structure of the brain. And for a long time we thought, oh, it's done, after you're 12 or whatever. No. It is plastic for your whole life. Less so than when you're 12, but it still can change. And so what happens is, as you practice peace, what you're doing is practicing peace. I had an interesting experience when I was in my early years. I had come back from the ashram and I had this great meditation experience, and I went in, I lit my little candle, and I had my little flowers and pictures of my family there, and I sat down and I'm like, okay, breathe. And the birds are singing, and it's a perfect morning, and bills are paid, my kids and I are getting along, everything's fine. And my mind scans my life until it finds the one thing that is unresolved. And I start to wrestle. How could she? And she didn't pay me back that money. And she said, and I went, wait, Gloria. See, I had something to compare it to. I went, stop. Okay, meditate. Okay, put it down. I'm gonna call her. I'm just gonna. And there it went again. And I suddenly got it. I went, oh, I have a negative mind. You couldn't have told me that because I'm a very positive person. But my mind wanted to seek out the one thing that wasn't working. Now, there are good reasons for this. There are reasons we go toward the by the way, I'm a certified yoga instructor, and I've taught yoga philosophy, and also you're going to get a little dose of this stuff. The reason is because we really do need to watch for the danger zones in our, the tiger in the jungle, the flesh-eating dinosaur, whatever. We need to have that ability to watch. What happens is we get overstimulated to the bad. I mean, we know that people who watch television all the time, especially with a lot of stuff that's going on now or at any time, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam, you can watch any of that stuff. There's always corruption and war and dying, and if you watch that all the time, you will start to feel that the world is a very dangerous place, when in actuality, right now, there is less armed conflict going on in the world than at any time in the history of the world. Huh? But ISIS and decapitations but in truth, but we get it brought into our, imagine if you lived for the people in Syria, yeah, but I live in Lake Arrowhead. Nobody's getting decapitated in Lake Arrowhead, Your God, thank you. But so it depends on where we're putting our attention. So you talk about being mindful. It depends on where we're putting our attention. And we tend to find what we look for. We tend to find what we look for.
So the trauma of your childhood abuse, was happening, and it actually formed you physically, psychologically. And then what you're saying is meditation can fix that and do the reverse.
It can change the brain. Because we start to become, just like becoming aware of my tendency to look at the negative, and the negative about myself. I mean, I've developed a whole way of teaching this stuff, but we always can change. We can change until the last minute. If we're on a tendency and we're going down a path, and we say, I don't like the way I'm living. I don't like the way I'm feeling. I don't like the way. The biggest thing is to become aware. What are you thinking? What are you thinking? But the problem is, the difficulty is sometimes the thoughts are subterranean. They're really deep down.
Right.
They're, and there's an acting technique called hold it lines. And a hold it line is an improvisational technique that, what's her name? Fabulous teacher. And she taught, I learned it from Stephen Book, an acting coach. But the idea is you take a line that's always... No, another one, but I'll think of it in a minute. You take a line because in a script, a character embodies certain understandings, certain life messages. We call them personal myths in psychology, okay? And you will hear, I'll give you a great one. Remember the Rainmaker?
Yeah.
Remember the Okay,
Sure.
Burt Lancaster, right? Burt Lancaster. And Katharine Hepburn, yes, thank you, Katharine Hepburn. I heard that little voice and I got distracted. Katharine Hepburn feels she's playing, and she's with him, and she's saying her hold it line, her personal idea about herself that she holds as an absolute truth is, well, I'm not pretty. I think that's what she says, I'm not pretty. And he said, but you are pretty. And she said, oh no, I'm not. And what did I'm not pretty mean? Well, to her family and in her community, I'm not pretty is no man's going to want me. I'm going to be alone the rest of my life. No one's going to want to marry me. I'm going to just be here to serve. I'm here to serve my dad and my brothers, and I have no life of my own. My life is, I just have to do whatever everybody else wants. I have no life of my own. And you see this gorgeous shift
from the hold it line that she has to the expansion of her being when he says, but you are pretty. You're very pretty. And you see her go from, no, I'm not pretty, to, you see her start to blossom like a flower. In that time when she is given an expansion on this idea that she holds about herself. Well, that's what acting is. What do we do with acting? We start with people with a problem, and when it's a really great script, we see that person grow and expand and change, and hopefully by the end of it, some great shift has taken place that gets us excited, you know, that warms our hearts or changes us in some way, some realization. And that's what happens. And I suddenly got it when I took this acting class with Stephen Book for 2 years. And I realized, I caught myself saying one day, nothing I do is good enough. Nothing I do is good enough. Nothing. And I thought, oh my God, that sounds like a hold it line. I was still crying, but there was another part of me that was saying, that sounds just like a hold it line. Because the hold it line is an always or never line. It's always or never because it was formed in childhood. Children don't know in the middle. They know always or never. Everything is, you know, omnipotent about them. Like you said, they say something like, you never take me for ice cream. And you say, I took you yesterday, but you never take me today. You know, it's always or never. Well, for children, it's an absolute. So when we hear ourselves in a time of usually rage or great grief, saying something that's an always or never statement, that's a personal myth that we hold about ourselves. And I found out once I learned it's a combination of acting and yoga psychology, etc. When I started to put these things together, I found, and I started listening to myself, and I found out I have some, nothing I do is good enough, big hold it line. No one understands me. My way of solving that was I talked louder and longer. If you didn't understand me, I'd make sure you could understand me. Right? And another one I found was somebody always spoils my fun. And I don't know where that came from. But it would really bother me if I wanted to do something and somebody would tromp on it. Yeah, so I don't know if maybe that was from living with an alcoholic and, you know, I would be happy and then something, pots and pans would start to fly or, you know, something like that.
So do you think everyone should take an acting class and a yoga class? I think they should. Whether you want to be an actor or not, right?
An acting class, an improv class is really great because you have to wing it. You just have to be up there. And the greatest thing about it is you have to say yes. That's a fabulous chicken on your head. Yes, I know. I just bought him yesterday, and he has a cousin. And I'm going to pick the cousin up tomorrow. And you just play along. You just say yes and. Yes, and isn't he pretty? I love the red feathers on top. He's just, you know, and you just play along. But isn't that what kids do? They play along. And we lose that. We want to refute. We know it, but it's reality. But no, come on, play. You know, so.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, you know, your writing for the classic TV themes and how you also have a show that you include many classic TV themes.
Well, we put that show together and my darling partner passed last year and we didn't get it up on its feet in the way we wanted to. We had it. It was extraordinary. It was called TV Tunes, and we had it one night at the Music Box that was in Hollywood, and people just said, "Oh my God, this is the best show! You're not going to be here tomorrow. We want to come back." But she got sick, and then my sister got sick, and lots of stuff. So, is that an earthquake?
No, it's the gym upstairs.
Okay. We had one the other morning in Lake Arrowhead. I felt. Did you feel it down here?
No, but I heard that.
It was strange. But yeah, that was really fun. Yeah.
Why do you think people love those themes so much? What is it?
I grew up with them. You take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have the facts of life. The facts of life. There you go.
Yeah, there she goes. The facts of life. She wrote that.
I co-wrote it. Got to give Alan some credit.
Okay.
Come on.
And you also did.
And I sang it. That was my voice.
Right.
You heard all these. Don't you
And-
love that mailbox money? Oh, honey, let me tell you.
Yeah, but
I
what-
still get checks for different strokes and facts of life. Yay!
We're not-
Yay!
Hello, Larry.
I didn't write Hello,
Oh, you
Larry.
didn't write it?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Okay.
Alan was the big TV theme writer. He started in Canada writing for the CBC. The CBC, eh? Anyway, remember, Danny Mann? Danny Mann, well, he's a comedian, comic writer, etc., etc. Danny Mann, remember the movie Babe? He was the rooster,
Oh.
the rooster in Babe. That was always, and he was at the house one night. This is many years ago, and they were having a writing session, and and I came in to bring them coffee or something, and they started in on. He says, "You work for the CBC, eh?" And then Alan said, "Yep, I'm a CPA with the CBC, eh?" And then they said, "You got a little drinking problem, so you joined the AA, eh?" and of course, the more they did, the funnier it got. So that's where that came from, the CBC, eh? But yes, classic. I think people just love them because they take them back, and everybody knows them. That night we did TV tunes. Everybody
And
sang
they
along.
don't have-
10-year-olds. Patricia Neal was there that night, 82 years old. She was singing along with all the theme songs. It was amazing. It was fabulous.
And they don't have any theme songs. We talked about that last
I
week.
know. They go right into the next thing. There's almost no theme music at all anymore. Well, you see, but you have 729 channels to choose from. Before you had 3. So, the theme music was a way to pull you in. Now they don't want to lose you.
Yeah.
They want to show a grisly murder so you get interested,
Right.